It's Friday and I have early morning voice, but that's not going to stop me from doing a review of The Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 7. Last week's episode was the best episode of the season so far, and so I was just curious to see how they would transition from the best episode of the season. Would they top themselves like they have been, or would it be a down episode? Not as good as the previous couple episodes, but still good. And that's what we got this episode. This was still a fantastic episode, but it just isn't what the last episode was, what the Ahsoka episode was. And don't get me wrong, I still love this episode. And it's like getting Spider-Man Far From Home, like, after Endgame, like, what happened. It's just, of course, it's not going to compare to the last episode, but I never expected it to. And, like, this had a lot of good elements as well. But it just had two problems. And the last episode really didn't have any. So let's just get into those problems first. Because I think it's pretty well known that the show had a little bit of a shakeup with Pedro Pascal and the helmet situation. And sometimes you can tell it was tacked on at the last second just because the writing got a little lazy when it came to helmet situation. And full spoilers, by the way, before I butcher this. The writing, especially with Bill Burr, his character, the second he took off that helmet, it disappeared out of his existence and it was never mentioned again. Ever. Because there was many situations in the episode where he's like, well, we can't do this because blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, if you kept your helmet with you, you wouldn't be in that situation. It's just weird that someone from the Empire would leave. He's former Empire, and he left his helmet on the ship. That didn't make any sense to me. And then, of course, Mando and eventually took off his helmet, which was nice to see Pedro Pascal's face not all messed up like we saw in the season finale of the last season. And my last little problem was, even Boba Fett was barely in this episode, and I kind of expected a little bit more of a team up between Mando and Boba Fett, but because the beginning of the episode, he had his armor all polished and stuff like that, but he was still in the episode a good amount, definitely a lot more than I expected for the season as a whole, so I'm not going to really complain about that too much. But let's get into what I liked about this episode. I like what they did with Mando's character. They put him in many situations that he wasn't used to. For one, when he was fighting on the cruiser or whatever it was, he had terrible armor on. And you can tell, and it showed in the way he was fighting. So he was talking to people about the Empire. And he was in an Empire base with his helmet off. Pedro Pascal's acting, just by his face in that whole entire scene, was perfect. He did such a good job in showing how uncomfortable he was. And, like, this could be scarring for him because you know how he is about this is the way, and everything about what he was doing right then and there was going against his way, and the acting on Pedro Pascal's face showed it all, and it was perfect. I like how Bill Burr questioned the code, and he was making some valid points. He was saying stuff like, so you're never supposed to take off the helmet, but then you're not allowed to show people's face, and then it's okay to put on another person's helmet. And then that point was definitely put across this episode. Like, that could be a little forced by Pedro Pascal, but it wasn't something that wasn't unnecessary to have there. So I was glad. I'm at least happy that they mentioned something like that. There were the moment in the episode where Bill Burr decides to shoot this officer, I guess. It reminded me of Han Solo, and I guess that's maybe what they're trying to go with for that. And the moment in another Pedro Pascal face acting moment, you could definitely tell what he was thinking the whole entire time, and he just couldn't say it. It was great. The action in this episode was intense just because I felt like there was more of a threat of Mando getting hurt because of that crappy armor that he's wearing, because there was a couple of times where it seems like he was getting hurt, and it was called off to the last second. But it also proved that Mando is like Iron Man, not like Iron Man, but like Iron Man, he's more than just the suit. He is a warrior. It's not the suit doing all the tricks for him. He had that armor on, and he was able to go through all of those pirates like that very easily. Of course, not as easy with all his toys, but still, it was very good for if it was only a stormtrooper. The ending of the episode where Mando was basically saying to Moff Gideon, "And I'm coming for you," like in Transformers or something like that. I love that. And yeah, I love the team episodes of Mando. We got a lot of that this season, definitely a lot more than last season. And I really like this episode. And like I said, the writing did get a little lazy when it came to the helmet situations, and that was a good portion of the episode. So I had to take off my score a little bit for that. And just because I was hyped up at the beginning of the episode because Boba's armor was all polished and we barely got him in this episode. But I'm not going to let that affect my score too much. And I'm going to give this episode a 9 out of 10. Another great episode. Can't wait for the season finale. Not going to get my hopes up. I'm expecting it to be the best episode of the season, but I don't know. I don't know who's directing it. I hope it's either Taika again. But I don't think I saw his name on the director's list, so I'm expecting Jon Favreau or Dave Filoni to close the season, or maybe Deborah Chow. Who knows? So yeah, that's my review of Mandalorian season 2, episode 7. What was the episode title? Started with a B, I think. Season 2, episode 7. Like I said, 9 out of 10. So yeah, like, share, subscribe, and stuff like that. And adios.